History's greatest strategies were invisible by design. We will uncover 30 ancient power moves so subtle they were mistaken for coincidence, revealing how the most brilliant maneuvers hide in plain sight. You will gain a new mental toolkit for recognizing hidden influence in your own life, from business decisions to personal relationships. How did a simple wooden horse topple an entire civilization? And why do we still fall for similar tricks today? This journey through forgotten empires shows that what looks like random luck is often a master's calculated play. Are you ready to see the hidden patterns shaping your world? A massive wooden horse stood silently outside the gates of Troy, an apparent tribute to the gods and a symbol of the Greek surrender. But inside its hollow belly, elite soldiers waited in the dark, their breath held. The Trojans faced a choice that would seal their fate. Should they burn the offering or haul it inside their impenetrable walls as a trophy of victory? The poet Virgil captured this moment perfectly, describing how the priest Laocoon famously warned his people to beware of Greeks bearing gifts. He was ignored. The city celebrated, believing the long war was over. That night, the hidden soldiers crept out and opened the gates for the entire Greek army. The fall of Troy was not a military defeat in the field, but a masterful deception that turned the enemy's own hope against them. This is the Trojan Horse principle, the first and most iconic of the subtle power moves. It operates on a simple, devastating idea: offer something the other person deeply wants, a gift so desirable that it disarms their suspicion, while the real advantage remains hidden within. Think about modern business deals where a larger company offers a struggling startup a generous partnership. The promise is access to resources and a wider audience. The hidden reality is that the partnership agreement contains clauses that allow the larger company to absorb the smaller one entirely, acquiring its technology and talent for a fraction of the true cost. The startup celebrates the rescue, not seeing the takeover until it is too late. Or consider a personal relationship where one person consistently does favors for another, creating a sense of indebtedness. These helpful gestures seem like coincidental kindness, but they are a calculated investment. The eventual request for a much larger, often unethical, favor in return feels inevitable, a debt that must be paid. The principle teaches us to look past the surface of any offer that seems too good to be true. When an opportunity arrives with perfect timing, when a solution appears just as a problem becomes unbearable, we must ask ourselves a simple question. Who is really inside the horse, and what gate are they waiting to open? While the Trojans fell for a gift that concealed a threat, history's next great maneuver worked in reverse, presenting a seeming weakness that masked immense strength. This is the Delayed Gratification Gambit, the art of sacrificing an immediate advantage for a far greater victory that later appears as mere chance. The ancient Chinese strategist Sun Tzu captured its essence perfectly, advising commanders to wait patiently while their enemies exhaust themselves through frantic action. He knew that time itself could be a weapon, and the general who mastered patience could turn the battlefield's momentum without striking a single blow. Roman generals perfected this psychological play. Historical records detail how legions would deliberately appear disorganized and weak, feigning retreat to lure overconfident enemies into chasing them. The opposing force, believing they were routing a defeated army, would push forward into a narrow pass or a swampy field, terrain chosen long in advance. Then the seemingly broken Roman lines would reform, trapping and annihilating the exhausted pursuers. To any outside observer, the resulting victory looked like a fortunate accident, a lucky break of the land itself. when in reality it was the culmination of a plan set in motion days or weeks before. The profound psychology at work here relies on a common misjudgment. We often mistake patience for passivity and discipline for indecision. An opponent who waits is seen as hesitant or afraid, not as someone calmly executing a long-term design. This misperception is the gambit's greatest asset. In our own lives, we see this pattern in the investor who holds assets through dramatic market swings while others panic and sell. The eventual fortune they make seems, in hindsight, like a lucky guess or perfect timing, but it was not luck. It was the reward for a disciplined postponement of reward, for enduring short-term uncertainty for long-term gain. Similarly, a professional who spends years quietly building a specialized skill set, while their peers chase quicker, flashier certifications, often finds doors opening for them a decade later. Their breakthrough appears to be a sudden, coincidental opportunity, when it is actually the harvest of seeds they patiently planted long ago. The delayed gratification gambit teaches us to look beyond the immediate scoreboard. When we see someone seemingly doing nothing or passing up an obvious win, we must ask whether their inaction is truly weakness or the deepest form of strategy in play. Is their patience a prelude to a move we cannot yet see? Patience and retreat are powerful, but what happens when strategy involves not hiding the truth, but carefully crafting the lie that others find for themselves? A secret, accidentally discovered, carries a weight that a direct statement never could. In the shadowy corridors of the Byzantine court, emperors perfected this art, the controlled information leak. They understood that the most believable deception is one the target uncovers through their own supposed cleverness. A court official would whisper a confidential grievance in a tavern, knowing a rival's agent was listening. A tax collector's report filled with dire numbers would be left unattended for just a moment too long. The information, always slightly damaging to the one who supposedly let it slip, was designed to be found. The genius of this move is its psychological reversal. Instead of trying to convince you of something, it makes you feel like you have outsmarted me. You believe you are a savvy intelligence gatherer, and thus the false narrative you've uncovered becomes your own unshakable conclusion. This was not unique to Byzantium. Ancient Egyptian pharaohs facing external threats would have their scribes deliberately leave strategic papyrus scrolls in areas where foreign spies were known to operate. These documents might dramatically overstate the number of chariots in the royal army, or describe fictional grain shortages to lure an enemy into a poorly timed attack. The spy would return home a hero bearing priceless secrets, completely unaware they were carrying a weapon designed for them. Today, this ancient maneuver is everywhere. In politics, an anonymous leak to a journalist rarely happens by chance. It is a calculated release, often intended to test public reaction to a policy, to damage an opponent, or to create a smokescreen that draws attention away from a more important issue. The public debates the leaked information, while the true architects of the story remain in the shadows. In business, a company might strategically let slip during negotiations that they have another, more attractive offer on the table. They do not state it directly at the bargaining table, as that would seem like an obvious bluff. Instead, the information reaches the other party through a casual comment from a junior executive at a neutral event. The opposing negotiators now believe they are acting on their own insider knowledge, rushing to improve their offer to beat a competitor that may not even exist. This power move forces us to reconsider every piece of conveniently discovered information. That anonymous tip, the overheard conversation, the document that fell into the wrong hands, each carries a question. Who benefits from you believing this, and why did they make it so easy for you to find? The greatest secrets are not always the ones kept locked away, but the ones left out in the open, waiting for the right person to believe they have stolen them. A shared worldview feels like a rare discovery, a spark of genuine connection. Yet the ancient Greeks understood this feeling could be carefully engineered. Philosophers like Socrates were masters of a subtle social art, the social mirror technique. They would subtly reflect a student's own speech patterns, vocabulary, and even posture, building a bridge of trust so seamlessly the student never noticed its construction. The goal was not mockery but rapport. By holding up a social mirror, the philosopher made the student feel profoundly understood, opening their mind to new ideas that felt familiar, almost like their own. This technique was weaponized for persuasion in the Roman Forum. Orators would spend days discreetly observing their future audience, learning the local slang, the common gestures, the shared grievances. When they finally took the stage, they did not speak as outsiders. They communicated as one of the people, their words and delivery echoing the crowd's own identity back at them. The resulting bond felt instantaneous and natural, a lucky coincidence of aligned minds. In reality, it was a calculated performance designed to make the message irresistible. The profound power of this move lies in a simple truth. We are drawn to people who seem like us. We trust them more easily and are more open to their influence. A modern sales professional intuitively uses this by matching a client's energy level, speaking calmly and deliberately with a reserved engineer, or with enthusiastic speed to an eager entrepreneur. They are not being insincere, they are practicing a form of social empathy, but with a specific goal in mind. Similarly, a great leader might adopt a more collaborative tone with one team and a more direct, decisive style with another. The team's high performance feels like a product of their own dynamic, but it is often a response to leadership that has subtly shaped itself to fit them. This forces a crucial question about our own relationships and interactions. That instant chemistry, that feeling of having found your tribe, is it a matter of soulful chance, or is it the result of someone's deliberate, perhaps even unconscious, calibration? Recognizing the mirror allows us to appreciate the skill involved, and to ask whether the reflection we see is a true meeting of minds or a strategically polished surface. The battlefield at Cannae seemed to promise a total Roman victory. Hannibal's Carthaginian army, outnumbered and weary, appeared to crumble at the center, their lines folding inward as if breaking under the relentless Roman advance. But this collapse was a meticulously set trap. As the Roman legions pushed deeper, celebrating their imminent triumph, Hannibal's strongest forces on the wings held firm. They swung inward like two massive doors, encircling the entire Roman army in a deadly embrace. What looked like a fortunate reversal for Rome was in fact a masterful execution of the strategic withdrawal maneuver. This move operates on a principle ancient Chinese strategists called retreating 10 steps to advance 100. It is the deliberate creation of a false setback, a staged disengagement that makes an opponent drop their guard just as they believe they have won. The psychological trigger is overconfidence. When we think we are winning, our focus narrows to the pursuit and we stop watching for pitfalls. We become careless, charging into spaces we would normally avoid. This is not just a military tactic. A major corporation might announce it is leaving a competitive market, framing the exit as a necessary retrenchment. Competitors, seeing the retreat, breathe a sigh of relief and stop investing as heavily in that space. Meanwhile, the departing company uses the breathing room to develop a revolutionary new product. Years later, it re-enters the market not as a follower but as a dominant leader, its temporary withdrawal having been a long-term repositioning play. On a personal level, this maneuver can be just as powerful. Stepping back from a heated argument can feel like losing the point in the moment, yet that strategic disengagement provides the clarity to see the larger pattern of the conflict. You return not with a louder voice, but with a more precise insight that resolves the issue entirely. The retreat was not a defeat, but a recalibration. So when you witness a sudden reversal, whether in a news story, a business deal, or your own life, it is worth pausing to look past the surface. Is this a genuine failure, or is it a calculated step back, the deep breath before a leap that changes everything? A Persian garden was a masterpiece of invisible control. Its winding streams and shaded pathways felt like a natural paradise, yet every element was meticulously placed to guide a visitor's footsteps and frame their view, directing them toward a specific pavilion or perspective without a single spoken command. This is the environmental engineering strategy, the sixth power move, where the very space around us is shaped to make certain choices feel inevitable. Ancient Roman engineers applied this same principle on a massive scale. The narrow, winding streets of their cities were not just chaotic growth. They were deliberately designed to break up large crowds, prevent rapid troop movements, and funnel people toward grand forums where imperial messages could be broadcast. A person walking felt they were choosing their own route while the entire urban plan was shepherding them. In medieval castles, this strategy became a matter of life and death. Spiral staircases were almost always built to ascend clockwise. This gave a right-handed defender standing above the full range of motion to swing their sword, while the right-handed attacker climbing from below found their own weapon arm cramped against the central stone column. The architecture itself was a silent, relentless bodyguard. The profound effectiveness of this move lies in our deep-seated belief that our choices are our own. We rarely question the stage upon which we act. A modern supermarket is a textbook example of this ancient art. The essentials like milk and bread are often placed at the very back of the store, forcing you to pass aisles of high-margin impulse buys. The soothing music and specific lighting are not just for atmosphere. They are carefully calibrated to slow your pace, put you at ease, and make you more likely to fill your cart. You leave feeling you made every purchasing decision independently, never realizing you were walking a path designed by a retail architect. In the digital world, this environmental engineering is even more precise. Social media feeds are engineered to maximize engagement, using algorithms that create a personalized landscape of information. The autoplay feature on a video platform, the 1 more minute prompt on a reading app, these are not neutral functions. They are subtle architectural features built into your digital environment, gently guiding your behavior, your attention, and even your mood. The strategy forces us to look up from the path and question the landscape itself. That seamless flow through a store, that endless scroll through a feed, does it feel natural because it is, or because it was engineered to feel that way? Recognizing this invisible architecture is the first step to reclaiming the choices you thought were always your own. An act of extraordinary generosity rarely feels like a transaction. In ancient Mesopotamia, a merchant might present a valued customer with an unexpected gift, a rare spice or a finely woven textile, offered with no apparent strings attached. This was not a simple sale. It was the calculated generosity ploy, a long-term investment in loyalty that competitors would mistake for a simple personality quirk or a stroke of good fortune for the buyer. The merchant was not just giving away goods, they were building an unbreakable social bond, ensuring that customer would return for a lifetime, bypassing every other stall in the marketplace. This principle of strategic giving was scaled to an imperial level by the pharaohs of ancient Egypt. Historical accounts describe how, during years of famine and hardship, a pharaoh would issue a decree forgiving the grain debts of the populace. The immediate cost to the royal granaries was immense, but the long-term payoff was absolute. The people's desperate relief transformed into fierce, generational loyalty. They saw their ruler not as a distant tax collector, but as a divine benefactor. His power, which could have been broken by rebellion, was instead cemented for decades. The profound psychology here is that we are wired to see spontaneous kindness as a reflection of pure character. When someone helps us unexpectedly, we do not instinctively ask what they want in return. We feel a deep sense of gratitude and a powerful urge to reciprocate, to prove we are equally worthy of that goodwill. This emotional debt is a far stronger bond than any written contract. Today, this ancient ploy is everywhere. An airline unexpectedly upgrades a frequent flyer to first class. The traveler is delighted, feeling specially chosen, and their loyalty to that airline solidifies far more than any points program could achieve. A software company offers a struggling small business a free suite of premium tools for a year. The business survives and thrives, and when the free period ends, the cost of switching to a competitor feels like a betrayal of the company that helped them in their darkest hour. In your own career, a colleague who offers unsolicited, crucial help on a project is not just being nice, they are building social capital. When they later need a favor, a recommendation, or an ally in a meeting, you are far more likely to provide it, not out of obligation, but from genuine appreciation. The move forces us to reevaluate every act of unexpected kindness. That free sample, that surprise discount, that unasked for assistance, are they truly random, or are they a subtle investment in your future choices? Recognizing the ploy does not make the generosity less valuable, but it does make you wiser. You can appreciate the gift while understanding the invisible ledger it might be written on. A Zen master presents a student with an impossible question. What is the sound of one hand clapping? The student's rational mind stutters and stalls, its usual pathways blocked. This deliberate disruption, this pattern interruption, was not about the answer itself, but about shattering the student's reliance on habitual thought to create an opening for true insight. This is the eighth subtle power move, a tactic that weaponizes unpredictability. Ancient Mongol commanders were masters of this art on the battlefield. Historical records describe how they would attack a city for 2 consecutive dawns, then suddenly strike at midnight on the third day. They might feign a panicked retreat once, only to stand and fight ferociously the next time. To their enemies, these shifts seemed like random chaos, fortunate breaks in a predictable siege. In reality, every variation was calculated to keep their opponents perpetually off balance, exhausted, and unable to form a coherent defense. The power here comes from our brain's deep need for patterns. We rely on cognitive routines to navigate the world efficiently, and when those routines are broken, we are left momentarily vulnerable, our attention heightened, and our defenses down. This creates a critical opening for new ideas, new commands, or new deals to take root. Today, this ancient tactic is deployed in plain sight. A marketer abandons the typical sales pitch for a startling, emotionally resonant story. The interruption of your expected advertising filter makes you listen, and the message slips through. A negotiator, after hours of circular debate over price, suddenly changes the subject entirely to the other party's long-term legacy. The unexpected shift breaks the adversarial rhythm, often revealing a shared value that becomes the true key to an agreement. Even in our personal lives, breaking a negative pattern in a relationship, like responding to anger with calm curiosity instead of equal fury, can completely reset a dynamic. The resulting positive change feels like a fortunate breakthrough, but it was engineered by a deliberate rupture of the established script. This forces us to reconsider moments of surprise in our own lives. That sudden shift in a competitor's strategy, that unexpected clause in a contract, that bizarre question in a job interview, are they signs of disorganization, or are they a calculated pattern interrupt designed to create an opening you did not even know was there? The most fortunate unpredictability is often the most carefully planned. A crowded Roman street echoes with the sound of one man's name, chanted by dozens of enthusiastic supporters. What the crowd does not know is that every one of those cheerleaders was paid to be there, their genuine seeming fervor a carefully staged performance to create an illusion of inevitable victory. This is the social proof illusion, the ninth power move, where the perception of popularity is manufactured to make a choice feel safe and correct. Ancient Egyptian priests perfected this same art. When a pharaoh declared an unpopular tax or a new religious edict, the priests would orchestrate what appeared to be spontaneous public celebrations. Temples would fill with seemingly devoted followers praising the decision, their planted enthusiasm designed to sway the silent, uncertain majority. To an observer, it looked like the people had spoken. In reality, the people's voice was a carefully scripted echo. The profound effectiveness of this illusion taps into a fundamental human instinct. We are social creatures who find safety in numbers. When we are unsure, we look to others for cues on how to think and act. A choice that appears popular feels less risky, as if the collective has already done the hard work of vetting it for us. This instinct is what makes the illusion so powerful. In the modern marketplace, this ancient tactic is the engine behind countless trends. A company launching a new tech product might provide free devices to influential students on a university campus. Soon, it appears that everyone is using this new gadget, creating a bandwagon effect that drives genuine sales. The popularity seems organic, but it was seeded by a strategic giveaway. Online, this maneuver is even more precise. The first 105-star reviews for a new restaurant, the sudden surge of comments on a video, the coordinated sharing of a hashtag, all can be the digital equivalent of those hired Roman supporters. We see the crowd and our brains tell us that where so many are heading, there must be something valuable. This forces a crucial question about the consensus we see around us. That best-selling book, that viral video, that must-have holiday toy, did they achieve fame through pure merit, or was their popularity engineered from the very beginning? Understanding the social proof illusion allows us to pause and ask not just what is popular, but who first decided it should be. A master swordsman intentionally leaves his right side open for a single, tempting moment. His opponent, seeing the apparent flaw, commits to a powerful thrust, only to find the opening was a deliberate trap, his own momentum carrying him onto the waiting blade. This is the strategic vulnerability display, the 10th power move, where showing a small weakness is the surest way to provoke a fatal mistake. Ancient Japanese samurai perfected this deadly dance, understanding that the promise of an easy victory could blind an enemy to the reality of their own destruction. Viking sagas recount similar cunning, where chieftains would stage scenes of disarray, allowing scouts to see their camps with dwindling supplies and tired warriors. An opposing army, believing they were attacking a weakened foe, would charge directly into a carefully prepared killing zone. Their defeat seemed like a tragic miscalculation, a piece of bad luck, when it was the direct result of a story they were tricked into believing. The psychology here is brutally efficient. We are conditioned to exploit perceived advantages. When we spot a crack in someone's armor, our instinct is to press that advantage, to lean in with full force. This very instinct is what the strategist manipulates, using your own aggression as the weapon that defeats you. In modern business, this move takes a more subtle, psychological form. A company might publicly acknowledge a minor product flaw before a competitor can expose it. This apparent act of transparency does incredible damage control, building immense trust with consumers who appreciate the honesty. The company appears vulnerable, but in reality, it has controlled the narrative entirely, turning a potential weakness into a demonstration of integrity. On a personal level, a leader might share a carefully chosen past failure with their team. This admission of imperfection does not diminish their authority. Instead, it makes them more relatable, more human, and fosters a deeper sense of loyalty and psychological safety within the group. The connection that forms feels authentic, and it is, but the specific vulnerability shared was a strategic selection designed to build that very bond. This forces us to look differently at every apparent weakness we encounter. That confession from a rival, that admission of a limited budget in a negotiation, that shared story of a past struggle, are they genuine moments of exposure, or are they precisely placed bait? The strategic vulnerability display teaches us that the most dangerous traps are not the ones hidden behind strength, but the ones concealed within an invitation to attack. A skilled storyteller never begins with the argument itself. They first build the stage, choosing the scenery and lighting that will make their final point feel like the only logical conclusion. This is the contextual framing method, the 11th power move, where an idea is placed inside a narrative or framework that makes it appear natural, even inevitable. Ancient Greek philosophers were masters of this art. They would wrap complex logical propositions within fables about heroes and gods. The listener, engrossed in the story's flow, would arrive at the philosophical truth not through debate, but through a sense of personal discovery. The conclusion felt less like it was taught and more like it was always known. This method was adopted and refined across centuries. Medieval scholars, for instance, faced a profound challenge when their scientific observations clashed with religious doctrine. Their solution was a brilliant act of framing. They would present a discovery about astronomy or anatomy not as a radical new idea, but as a deeper understanding of God's magnificent creation. By framing the new within the context of the deeply familiar and sacred, they made controversial truths palatable and safe. Similarly, Renaissance artists and architects did not claim to be inventing something new. They framed their revolutionary use of perspective and engineering as a rediscovery of lost classical knowledge from ancient Rome and Greece. Their work was presented not as rebellion, but as a respectful return to a purer past, a context that disarmed critics and won powerful patrons. The immense power of this maneuver lies in a fundamental trait of the human mind. We do not evaluate new information in a vacuum. We automatically slot it into pre-existing mental models, the stories we already tell ourselves about how the world works. An idea that fits neatly into an established framework is accepted with little resistance, feeling more like common sense than persuasion. Today, this ancient technique shapes decisions in boardrooms and living rooms alike. A business leader does not simply propose a risky new initiative. They first frame it within the undeniable trajectory of an industry trend, showing how their plan is not a gamble but a necessary adaptation to shifts everyone can already see. The proposal appears less like a choice and more like the next logical step. In our personal lives, a request for a significant favor is rarely made out of the blue. It is carefully framed as a natural extension of the relationship, a small step forward from the support and trust that already exists. the yes feels like an affirmation of the bond itself, not a transaction. This forces a critical question about the obvious truths we encounter every day. That business strategy that seems so sensible, that personal decision that feels so right, are they inherently correct, or have they been masterfully placed inside a context that guides us toward them? Recognizing the frame allows us to step back and see the invisible edges that shape our perception of the picture within. A pharaoh's coronation was timed for the precise moment the Nile's floodwaters began to crest, a natural event seen not as seasonal routine but as the god's direct blessing for his reign. This is the calculated timing principle, the 12th subtle power move, where human action is deliberately synchronized with a predictable but awe-inspiring event to borrow its perceived significance. Ancient Roman emperors, understanding this power perfectly, would often launch major military campaigns or announce new laws to coincide with the appearance of a comet or a solar eclipse. The populace, seeing their leader's ambition underscored by celestial drama, interpreted it as a sign of divine favor, a fortunate alignment of the stars. In reality, it was a masterful use of the calendar as a strategic weapon. The profound effectiveness of this maneuver rests on a deeply human tendency to connect dots, to find meaning in coincidence. When two events occur together, we instinctively weave a narrative of cause and effect, even when none exists. The strategist does not create the comet or the flood. They simply place their own move in its shadow, allowing our pattern-seeking minds to do the rest of the work. Today, this ancient principle orchestrates the rhythm of our modern world. A tech giant does not randomly choose a launch date for its new smartphone. It waits for the buzz of a major industry conference, ensuring its announcement is amplified by the existing media frenzy. The resulting surge of attention feels like a natural product of the event's energy when it was a meticulously timed insertion. In finance, a company might release stellar earnings reports during a general market upswing. Investors, already in an optimistic mood, attribute the company's success to the favorable economic tide, often overlooking deeper, more fragile fundamentals. The stock's rise appears to be a lucky break of good timing, not a strategic presentation of data. Even in our personal lives, we see this play out. A difficult conversation is initiated not in a moment of stress, but during a calm walk in a park, using the peaceful environment to frame the discussion as collaborative rather than confrontational. The positive outcome feels like a product of the setting when it was also a product of the chosen moment. This forces us to question every instance of perfect timing we witness. That sudden breakthrough, that opportune market entry, that surprisingly smooth conversation, did they happen by chance, or were they patiently waiting in the wings for the right cue to make their entrance? Recognizing the calculated timing principle allows us to see the invisible clockwork behind what we mistake for fate's fortunate hand. A Chinese diplomat never directly demands a rival court's surrender. Instead, he lavishes gifts and promises upon a smaller, neighboring kingdom, encouraging them to press their own claims against his true target. The rival court now faces a border conflict they believe is a local dispute, never sensing the distant hand that set the entire confrontation in motion. This is the 13th subtle power move, the indirect influence technique, where goals are achieved by working through third parties, completely concealing the source of the pressure. The power here is absolute deniability. The true architect remains in the shadows, their identity and intent masked by the seemingly independent actions of others. Venetian merchants were masters of this art. When a competitor threatened their trade dominance, they would not engage in a direct price war. Instead, they would offer exceptionally favorable terms to a different, smaller trading house, one that just happened to compete with their rival. This newly empowered partner would then aggressively undercut the original competitor, who fought a desperate battle against the wrong enemy, never realizing the Venetians were the silent financiers of their own struggle. Similarly, medieval monarchs often avoided the immense cost of open war by funding a rebellious faction within a neighboring kingdom or paying a nearby duke to raid their rivals' borderlands. The target kingdom would exhaust its resources putting down the rebellion or repelling the raids, its king growing weaker and more isolated, all while blaming his own troublesome nobles or aggressive neighbors. The true orchestrator, watching from a distant castle, achieved a strategic victory without ever mobilizing a single battalion. The modern world runs on this same ancient principle. A corporation facing regulatory scrutiny might fund a coalition of seemingly independent consumer advocacy groups to champion the very regulations the company privately supports, creating a public groundswell that appears entirely organic. The resulting policy change is credited to the people's voice, while the original influencer remains anonymous. On social media, an idea is rarely pushed directly by its originator. It is seeded with mid-tier influencers whose followers trust them as authentic voices. These individuals present the idea as their own, and their audiences adopt it, creating a viral wave that feels grassroots and spontaneous. The true source of the campaign is buried under layers of genuine but ultimately orchestrated enthusiasm. This technique forces a difficult but crucial question. When you feel pressure from all sides, when public opinion shifts, or when a competitor suddenly faces unexpected challenges, are you witnessing a natural change in the ecosystem? Or are you responding to the invisible strings of a puppeteer you did not even know was there? To see the true source of influence, you must stop looking at who is pushing you and start asking who stands to gain once you finally move. An initiate in an ancient mystery cult would never face the full weight of its secrets on the first day. They began with a simple oath, a minor ritual that felt like an honor. Then came a slightly more demanding ceremony, followed by a test of loyalty that seemed a natural next step. Each commitment, viewed in isolation, was a small and reasonable price for the profound knowledge they believed they were earning. This is the progressive commitment strategy, the 14th power move, where a series of minor, logical steps builds a path to a destination the traveler would have never agreed to at the outset. Roman political factions were masters of this gradual recruitment. A young patrician might be asked to deliver a harmless message, a task flattering in its implied trust. Next, he will be encouraged to use his family name to sway a minor vote. Later, he might be present for a conversation that, in hindsight, was clearly seditious. Each step was a small escalation from the last, easily justified by the social capital and influence he was gaining. To refuse the next request would mean invalidating all the trust and effort he had already invested. He became bound not by a single decision, but by the cumulative weight of his own previous choices. This same principle structured the medieval guild system. An apprentice did not start by crafting a masterpiece. They spent years on mundane tasks, sweeping the workshop and preparing materials. Each new skill, from simple joinery to complex carving, was presented as a natural promotion earned through their growing dedication. The apprentice justified the long hours and low pay by focusing on the ultimate goal of becoming a master. They rarely saw that the entire system was designed to extract maximum labor for minimum cost, using the promise of a distant future to secure their present compliance. The psychology at work here is both powerful and subtle. It is the principle of self-justification. Our brains strive for internal consistency. Once we have invested time, effort, or reputation into a path, we feel a deep need to prove to ourselves that the investment was wise. This makes us far more likely to accept the next, larger commitment. as refusing it would force us to admit our previous choices were mistakes. We would rather move forward into deeper obligation than face the cognitive dissonance of having been wrong. In the modern marketplace, this strategy is the engine behind the free trial that seamlessly becomes a monthly subscription. You commit to nothing but an email address. The service proves its value over 2 weeks, and when the payment automatically begins, canceling feels like losing a tool you have already integrated into your life. The small initial commitment of signing up paved the way for a recurring financial decision. Relationships, both personal and professional, often follow this same designed pathway. A friendship deepens through escalating confidences and favors. A business partnership evolves from a casual handshake agreement to a complex joint venture, each new level of entanglement feeling like the organic next chapter of a successful collaboration. The bond feels naturally progressive, but its trajectory often follows a predictable pattern of escalating investment. This forces a moment of reflection on the paths we are currently walking. That project at work that started small and now consumes your weekends, that membership you signed up for that now feels difficult to cancel, that personal goal that has morphed into an all-consuming obsession, did they grow by accident, or were you guided onto a ramp of progressive commitment? Recognizing the strategy allows you to periodically lift your head from the path and ask not just what the next step is, but where the entire staircase is ultimately leading. A royal procession moves through the streets of ancient Thebes, and as the pharaoh passes, a priest in the crowd suddenly cries out, hailing him as the living incarnation of the sun god. The cheer is taken up by the people, a spontaneous wave of devotion that seems to erupt from their very hearts. Yet this moment of perfect public affirmation was almost certainly engineered, a subtle power move designed to make divine status feel like a simple, observable fact. This is the identity reinforcement maneuver, the 15th ancient strategy, where situations are crafted so that others naturally affirm a desired identity, making the recognition feel earned and utterly authentic. Medieval European courts perfected this art. A young knight hoping to elevate his status might be secretly guided by his lord to a specific forest path, where he would conveniently rescue a nobleman from a staged ambush. The resulting public honor and land grant appeared to be the fortunate reward for a chance act of bravery, not a prearranged transaction. His new identity as a hero was cemented not by decree, but by a story that everyone, including the knight himself, believed was true. During the Renaissance, an artist's career could be made by a similarly fortunate accident. A powerful patron, wishing to support a painter without appearing to play favorites, would arrange to stumble upon their work in a lesser-known chapel or a fellow noble's home. The patron's subsequent, very public admiration and commission seemed like the discovery of raw genius, a happy coincidence of taste and timing. This validation, coming from a respected third party, carried far more weight than a direct application ever could. The profound power of this maneuver lies in a simple truth. We are far more likely to believe something about ourselves when we see it reflected in the eyes of others, especially when that reflection seems unscripted. An identity that is recognized feels more real than one that is merely claimed. In the modern workplace, this ancient play unfolds daily. An employee is singled out in a company-wide meeting for a seemingly small, almost overlooked contribution. The praise feels genuinely surprising, a moment of being seen that builds deeper loyalty than any formal bonus. The employee walks away reinforced as the kind of person who pays attention to details, an identity now publicly confirmed. On social media, this reinforcement is a precise science. An influencer's carefully curated lifestyle is validated not by their own posts, but by a stream of organic-looking endorsements from other users, giveaway winners and commenters who seem like genuine fans. This chorus of affirmation transforms a commercial persona into a trusted authority, making the carefully built identity feel like a naturally occurring phenomenon. So the next time you receive unexpected public praise or witness a peer's sudden rise to prominence, pause for a moment. Does this recognition reflect a truth that simply revealed itself, or was the stage deliberately set for this very revelation? The most believable identities are often the ones we help to build for each other, guided by hands we never see. The ancient Persian water engineer did not build a dam that shouted its own power. Instead, he designed a network of underground canals, a qanat, that brought mountain water silently to the desert floor, making barren lands bloom as if by a miracle of nature. The farmer who drank from that water felt blessed by the gods, never suspecting the human intelligence that guided its flow. This is the resource flow management strategy, the 16th subtle power move, where the control of essential assets is disguised to appear as natural fortune or unfortunate circumstance. Historical records from the Silk Road detail how powerful merchant guilds would deliberately withhold exotic spices or silks from certain caravan routes, creating artificial shortages in distant cities. When the goods finally arrived, their inflated prices were seen as a simple matter of supply and demand, a coincidence of difficult travel rather than a calculated manipulation from a faraway office. Similarly, medieval European lords knew that true power during a famine lay not in hoarding grain, but in managing its distribution. By releasing carefully measured amounts into the market at just the right times, they could appear as benevolent providers, their control over the food supply masked as a series of fortunate logistical successes. The peasants' gratitude felt genuine because their survival seemed like a natural outcome of their lord's wise stewardship, not the result of a coldly managed resource valve. The profound power here is psychological. When we believe a resource is naturally scarce, we compete with each other for it. When we believe it is naturally abundant, we feel secure and grateful. In both cases, we rarely question the source of the flow itself. We focus on the water in the cup, not the hand on the spigot. Today, this ancient strategy defines our digital existence. The visibility of a social media post or a small business's online store is not a matter of random chance. It is directed by algorithms that act as modern qanats, channeling the flow of attention. A post that goes viral often feels like a lucky break, a coincidence of public interest when its reach was carefully amplified by a platform's invisible engineering. A business that seems to have a sudden surge of customers may simply be benefiting from a temporary shift in the algorithmic current, a change in visibility they did not create and may not even understand. In the physical marketplace, luxury brands are masters of this art. They meticulously control the availability of their products, creating a perception of exclusivity that feels like an organic market response. The difficulty in acquiring a certain handbag is not a production error, it is the product. The buyer feels a sense of triumph and unique taste, never realizing their desire was shaped by a deliberately constructed scarcity. This forces a fundamental shift in how we view our own access and opportunities. That sudden boost in your online profile, that sold-out item you finally managed to purchase, that stream of clients that feels like a fortunate tide, are they truly random, or are you experiencing the effects of a resource flow someone else is quietly managing? Recognizing this move is the first step toward asking who truly controls the water and for whose garden it is ultimately meant to bloom. A revolutionary leader stands before a crowd, and their words seem to give voice to a pain the people have felt for years but could never quite articulate. The speech does not feel like a list of demands, but like a shared confession and a collective hope. This is the 17th subtle power move, emotional resonance creation, the art of crafting messages that align so perfectly with an underlying emotional current they feel personally resonant, not strategically targeted. Ancient bards were the masters of this craft. They did not invent new stories but retold ancient myths, subtly reshaping them to mirror the current fears and aspirations of their audience. A tale of a hero overcoming a tyrant would be told with specific details that echoed the local ruler's injustices. The listeners felt the story was theirs, a perfect expression of their own unspoken feelings, never suspecting the narrative had been carefully tuned to their frequency. This same principle fueled the rise of religious movements across history. A spiritual teacher's teachings would spread like wildfire, not because they revealed entirely new truths, but because they perfectly matched a deep, widespread yearning for meaning or purification. The followers believed they had found a kindred spirit, someone who understood their soul's journey, when in fact the message was designed to resonate with a pre-existing collective hunger. The power here is absolute. When a message feels like it originates from a shared experience, our critical defenses drop. We accept it not as persuasion, but as recognition. It feels like truth because it echoes what we already feel to be true. In the modern marketplace, this ancient move is the heartbeat of viral campaigns. An advertisement does not simply list product features. It tells a short story about creative struggle or parental pride or quiet anxiety, tapping directly into a cultural moment or a universal emotion. Viewers do not feel sold to, they feel seen. They share the ad not because they love the brand, but because the message perfectly captures a piece of their own emotional life. In leadership, the most effective managers are not just problem solvers, they are emotional translators. They listen to their team's frustrations and then articulate those feelings back to them with stunning clarity. When a leader says, "I know it feels like we're constantly putting out fires without ever getting to build anything," the team feels a wave of relief. Their leader gets it. This bond feels like authentic empathy, and it often is, but its strategic application builds loyalty and motivation far more effectively than any bonus or pep talk. This forces a poignant question about our own connections. That song lyric that feels written just for you, that political slogan that stirs something deep in your chest, that leader whose words seem to pluck the strings of your own frustration. Are you experiencing a moment of genuine soulful connection, or are you hearing a message precision tuned to the frequency of your heart? Recognizing emotional resonance creation does not make the feeling less real, but it allows us to appreciate the profound skill involved and to ask whether we are sharing a truth or being masterfully reflected. A Spartan king did not need a vast army to make his enemies hesitate. His very name, a reputation for absolute discipline and ferocity, did the work before the first spear was thrown. This is the 18th subtle power move, the perception gap exploitation, where the space between what others believe about you and the actual reality becomes your most potent, invisible weapon. Ancient commanders understood that a battle could be won not by force, but by the story the enemy told themselves about that force. Historical accounts describe how Mongol warriors, masters of psychological warfare, would allow their terrifying reputation to precede them. A city would hear whispers of approaching horsemen, of empires that had been utterly erased, and the gates would often swing open in surrender without a single arrow being loosed. The victory seemed like a fortunate accident of fear, but it was the deliberate harvest of a reputation cultivated through calculated, unforgettable displays of power. In a different arena, Renaissance city-states like Florence wielded not fear but cultural prestige. Their immense wealth funded art and architecture so breathtaking that it created an aura of unshakable stability and divine favor. A neighboring lord, considering a military alliance against them, might be swayed by a single visit to a Florentine basilica. The sheer scale of beauty and wealth created a perception of limitless resources, making conflict seem futile. The decision to stand down felt like a pragmatic assessment when it was actually a capitulation to a perfectly managed perception. The psychology at work is both simple and profound. Our brains are cognitive misers, always looking for shortcuts. We rely heavily on pre-existing labels and reputations to make sense of new information. A brand known for heritage and quality can launch a new product at a premium price, and consumers willingly pay, believing the higher cost is a natural reflection of superior value. They are not just buying an object, they are buying the story they already believe about the maker. In your own career, a professional with an established reputation for reliability is given the benefit of the doubt when a project hits a snag. Their explanation is accepted, while another, less established colleague might be scrutinized. The successful navigation of the crisis appears as a matter of their good standing, but that standing was the strategic asset that ensured a calm, favorable hearing. This exploitation creates a self-reinforcing cycle. A strong reputation leads to more opportunities, which builds more success, which further cements the reputation. What looks from the outside like a simple case of someone being consistently lucky or inherently talented is often the result of this initial perception gap being opened and then expertly widened. So when you see a competitor who always seems to get the easy wins, or a product that commands loyalty beyond its features, ask yourself what story you are already believing about them. The greatest advantages are not always built on reality, but in the fertile ground between what is true and what everyone has been led to believe. Roman engineers built arches that did not just hold up weight, they directed the flow of human traffic, guiding citizens through forums and temples in a way that felt like a natural stroll, not a controlled march. This is the 19th power move, structural constraint utilization, the art of using existing limitations as a hidden blueprint, making radical outcomes appear as organic, almost inevitable progressions. Medieval scholars faced a monumental constraint, the rigid framework of church doctrine. To introduce revolutionary ideas about the cosmos or human anatomy, they did not smash the system. They worked masterfully within it, presenting new astronomy as a deeper appreciation of God's creation and new medicine as a better understanding of the soul's divine vessel. Their innovations seemed like devout refinements, fortunate discoveries that strengthened the faith, when they were actually brilliant end runs around the very boundaries that appeared to contain them. The great age of exploration was fueled by a similar navigation of constraints. Explorers like Columbus did not set out to find a new world. Their official missions and their funding were bound to the established goal of discovering faster trade routes to known land. The accidental discovery of the Americas seemed like the ultimate historical coincidence, a staggering piece of luck. Yet it was the direct result of a calculated venture operating within the strict financial and political structures of its time, a structural constraint that paradoxically led to a world-altering breakthrough. The power here is one of camouflage. An idea that presents itself as a radical break is met with fear and resistance. The same idea, framed as a natural evolution of an existing structure, is welcomed as a sensible improvement. It feels less like a revolution and more like a fortunate next step that everyone simply failed to see before. In the modern business world, this ancient move is a survival skill. A tech startup does not try to dismantle an entire industry's regulations. It designs a product that fits perfectly within the current legal framework, its innovation appearing as a clever application of the rules rather than a challenge to them. Its success seems like a lucky break of good timing, when it was actually a masterclass in navigating the labyrinth others saw as a cage. On a personal level, you see this when an individual achieves profound change not by shouting from the outside, but by patiently rising through the ranks of an existing organization. Their eventual influence, which reshapes the culture from within, appears to be a fortunate alignment of their values with the company's evolution. The reality is they were strategically utilizing the structure of the hierarchy itself as their vehicle for transformation, turning the system's own rules into the tools for its change. This reframes every limitation we encounter. That tight budget, those industry standards, that organizational bureaucracy, are they genuine barriers, or are they the very structures a clever strategist would use to make their success appear effortless, a simple case of being in the right place at the right time? The most elegant innovations are not those that break the mold, but those that use the mold's own shape to create something unexpectedly new. A Greek playwright knew the audience's gaze was his to command. With a sudden shift in the chorus's position or a lone actor stepping into a pool of torchlight, he could make a crucial detail unmissable, while the true mechanics of the plot unfolded in the shadows. This is the attention direction method, the 20th subtle power move, the art of making people look where you want while they remain convinced they are discovering the focus all on their own. Renaissance painters were masters of this visual guidance. They used leading lines in architecture, the subtle play of light and shadow, and the directional gazes of painted figures to pull a viewer's eye inexorably toward the heart of the story, often a religious revelation or a patron's proud face. You feel you are simply appreciating the painting's natural center, unaware your entire visual journey was carefully mapped by the artist's hand. On the battlefield, this method became a matter of life and death. A Roman general would launch a noisy, visible assault on a fortified gate, a classic feint that consumed the defender's attention and resources. While every eye and every arrow was fixed on that spectacle, the general's best troops would scale an undefended, seemingly impassable section of the wall miles away. The fortress would fall from within, and the victory would be recorded as a lucky break, a fortunate lapse in the enemy's watchfulness, when it was the direct result of a perfectly executed diversion. The profound effectiveness of this maneuver lies in our brain's inherent trust in its own focus. We believe that what captures our attention does so through its own intrinsic importance. We rarely question why we are looking at one thing and not another. This cognitive blind spot is the strategist's greatest opening. In our digital lives, this ancient method is the core principle of user interface design. The bright, pulsating button on a website, the default option already selected in a form, the specific notification that appears at the top of your screen, these are not neutral elements. They are carefully engineered signposts directing your clicks, your choices, and your time toward outcomes that serve the platform's goals. You feel you are navigating the interface freely, but your path has been gently landscaped. Even in conversation, this power move is constantly at work. A skilled communicator does not state their conclusion first. They tell a story, peppered with vivid details and emotional emphasis on the specific points they want you to remember. Your mind, following the trail of emphasis, arrives at their desired conclusion, believing you have reasoned your way there independently. The idea feels more true because it feels like your own discovery. This forces a fundamental question about our own awareness. That compelling headline you clicked, that product feature you found so intuitive, that key point in a discussion that seemed so salient, did they earn your focus through pure merit, or was your attention quietly directed toward them? Recognizing the attention direction method is the first step in reclaiming your gaze, in asking not just what you are seeing, but what you might have been guided to overlook. A Roman emperor did not simply declare his own greatness. He commissioned statues that placed his likeness next to Jupiter, and his coins bore the inscription Pontifex Maximus, the highest priest of the state religion. He was not just a ruler, he was an associate of the gods themselves. This is the 21st power move, the association leverage technique, the art of borrowing credibility by creating a connection to a respected person, institution, or idea, making the transfer of positive attributes seem like a natural alignment. Medieval European kings, lacking the ancient Roman legacy, faced a constant challenge to legitimize their rule. Their solution was to weave elaborate genealogies, tracing their bloodline back to legendary figures like King Arthur or even to the heroes of the Trojan War. This fabricated lineage was not presented as a desperate claim, but as a rediscovered historical truth, a fortunate coincidence of heritage that bestowed upon them the right to rule. Their power appeared inherited from mythic heroes, not seized by political force. During the Renaissance, an aspiring artist's career depended entirely on this principle. To gain prestige, they did not just need skill, they needed to be associated with a recognized master. Studying in the workshop of a great painter was not merely an education, it was a branding exercise. The student's own work was seen through the lens of the master's genius, their talent amplified by the reflected glow of an established reputation. Their eventual success seemed like the organic flowering of inherited talent, when it was often a carefully leveraged connection. The psychology at work is a mental shortcut known as the halo effect. Our brains tend to transfer qualities between associated entities. If we admire a respected institution, we are predisposed to admire the person connected to it. If we trust a beloved celebrity, we are more likely to trust the product they endorse. The association does the persuasive work, allowing the strategist to stand in the shadow of a pre-existing positive feeling. Today, this ancient technique is the foundation of modern branding and professional networking. A new tech startup will eagerly seek a partnership with a globally recognized university, not just for the research, but for the credibility that the university's name lends to their own. The startup's innovation appears more trustworthy, more substantial, because it is associated with an institution dedicated to pure knowledge. Similarly, a professional will carefully cite a former, highly respected mentor or a prestigious former employer on their resume and in conversation. This is not just listing experience, it is leveraging an association. The listener unconsciously transfers the mentor's authority or the company's prestige onto the individual, making their ideas seem more weighty and their judgment more sound. Their career progression looks like a series of fortunate connections, when each association was a strategic step in building a credible identity. This makes us question the very nature of the reputations we encounter. That respected author blurbing a new novel, that local business displaying a charity partnership logo, that politician photographed with a beloved community leader, are these genuine affiliations of the heart, or are they calculated applications of an ancient leverage technique? The most powerful associations are often the ones that feel the most natural, making them the perfect vehicle for an influence that remains all but invisible. No single Roman edict announced the complete transformation of their calendar. Instead, a pontiff would add a single, unannounced day to the year, a slight adjustment to align with the seasons that most citizens never noticed. The following year, another small tweak might be made. Over decades, the entire system was remade, its final form accepted as the natural, inevitable order of things. This is the incremental normalization strategy, the 22nd power move, where radical change is broken into steps so small that each feels like a minor, logical adjustment, completely avoiding the backlash a sudden shift would provoke. Ancient scribes watched this happen with language itself. A new word from a conquered territory would appear in marketplace slang used by a few. It might then be written into a popular play, gaining a veneer of cultural legitimacy. Finally, it would be adopted by scholars and appear in official documents, its foreign origins forgotten. The language evolved, and everyone felt they were simply participating in the natural flow of communication, never realizing they were enacting a slow, deliberate cultural takeover. The profound power of this strategy lies in our psychological adaptation to a shifting baseline. Our sense of normal is incredibly malleable, recalibrating constantly to our recent experiences. A change that would feel jarring and unacceptable if it happened all at once becomes unnoticeable when spread across 100 tiny, painless steps. We adjust to the new normal without ever deciding to do so. Our modern world is shaped by this relentless, gentle pressure. The technology in your pocket did not arrive as a perfect, intimidating slab of glass and silicon. It began as a bulky phone that could also send emails, a minor convenience. Then it gained a rudimentary web browser, then a music player, then a camera. Each update added a function that felt like a natural, almost obvious extension of the last. The result was not just a new product, but a fundamental rewiring of human society, all accepted one convenient feature at a time. Public policy often follows the same hidden blueprint. A sweeping new regulation is rarely introduced in its full, controversial scope. It begins as a voluntary guideline or a pilot program in a few cities. After a period of acclimation, it becomes a mandatory standard, its final form appearing as the logical culmination of a proven success, rather than a radical imposition. This forces a critical examination of the changes unfolding around us right now. That new software update that slightly alters your privacy settings, the minor adjustment in your workplace protocol, the subtle shift in the terms of service for a platform you use every day, each feels like an isolated, insignificant tweak. But when you line them up over months or years, what new landscape have you quietly agreed to inhabit? The most transformative revolutions are not the loud, sudden ones, but the silent, step-by-step marches that feel like progress until you turn around and no longer recognize the place you started from. A Persian diplomat would weep at the border, lamenting the impossible demands of his own king, a performance designed to make his eventual, slightly less outrageous proposal feel like a gift of mercy. This is the expectation management principle, the 23rd subtle power move, where reality is not altered, but the lens through which it is viewed is carefully ground to create the illusion of fortune. Ancient military commanders were masters of this art. Before a battle, they would dispatch messengers bearing tales of an enemy's overwhelming numbers and invincible weaponry, seeding dread among their own troops and citizens. When the army returned victorious, having faced a formidable but manageable force, the triumph felt miraculous, a defiance of fate that cemented the commander's legend. The victory was real, but its glorious perception was a product of masterfully lowered expectations. Medieval merchants applied this same principle to their caravans. Arriving in a new city, they would openly bemoan the poor quality of their own silks or spices, pointing out imagined flaws and lamenting a difficult journey that had damaged the goods. When customers inspected the wares, they found them to be perfectly acceptable, even superior to local fare. The merchant's apparent honesty created trust, and the reality, which exceeded the grim preview, felt like a fantastic bargain. The customer left believing they had outsmarted the seller, never realizing the entire negotiation had been framed by the merchant's strategic pessimism. The profound power here is a simple trick of the mind. Our satisfaction is not an absolute measure, but a relative one, a gap between what we expected and what we received. A small win feels monumental when it follows the anticipation of certain defeat. A decent product feels exceptional when it surpasses a warning of mediocrity. The strategist does not change the outcome, they simply engineer the starting line to make the finish appear farther away. In our modern world, this principle is a cornerstone of professional success. A project manager presents a worst-case scenario timeline to their executives, outlining every potential delay. When the project is delivered 2 weeks ahead of this padded schedule, they are hailed as a miracle worker. The achievement is the same, but its reception is transformed by the managed expectation. Similarly, a savvy marketer might launch a new software with a modest feature list, promising only core functions. When users discover several unexpected, useful tools included for free, their delight translates into fierce loyalty and positive reviews. The product's value is amplified not by what it does, but by how effortlessly it surpassed the low bar that was set. This reframes every pleasant surprise in our lives. That project that finished ahead of schedule, that product that worked better than advertised, that negotiation that ended more favorably than predicted, did we simply get lucky, or were we first guided to expect far less? Understanding this principle allows us to see the invisible framing around our disappointments and our delights, revealing that the scoreboard of our satisfaction is often drawn by the very hands that are competing in the game. A medieval alchemist did not see a lump of lead, but the potential for gold trapped within a new conceptual frame. This is the 24th power move, the contextual redefinition method, the subtle art of shifting the meaning of something by placing it inside a different story, making old facts appear to reveal a new and startling truth. When Copernicus proposed that the Earth revolved around the Sun, he did not just present new data, he performed a masterful act of redefinition, taking the same planets and stars everyone could see and placing them within an entirely new cosmic framework. The familiar became newly strange, and a fundamental truth of existence was quietly rewritten. Political movements have repeatedly used this same maneuver to consolidate power. A historical event, say a peasant revolt, could be redefined over generations. To the nobles who suppressed it, the event was a lesson in chaos. A century later, nationalist historians might reframe that same revolt as an early, noble struggle for freedom, using the repurposed story to fuel a modern political identity. The facts of the rebellion remained, but their meaning was utterly transformed to serve a new context. The immense power of this method lies in our belief that facts speak for themselves. We forget that facts are mute until they are placed within a narrative that gives them voice and direction. A redefinition does not change the pieces on the board. It changes the very game being played, making a strategic outcome feel like an inevitable conclusion drawn from the evidence itself. In our modern economy, this principle is the engine of innovation and obsolescence. A company sitting on a failing technology does not simply improve it. They might redefine it entirely, framing a simple music player not as a piece of hardware, but as the key to a curated lifestyle and a personal identity. The object itself is similar, but its new context makes it desirable in a way it never was before. On a personal level, this is the key to career resilience. An individual's decade of experience in a declining industry is not a dead end. It is a collection of skills waiting for a new context. They can reframe their project management expertise from, say, print media to the emerging field of digital content strategy. Their value is not lost, it is redefined, and their sudden success in a new field appears to be a fortunate pivot when it was a deliberate act of contextual translation. This forces a profound question about the truths we hold to be self-evident. That scientific consensus, that historical narrative, that market trend you are certain you understand, are they built on immutable facts, or are they facts viewed through a lens that someone else carefully polished and set before your eyes? The most powerful understandings are not those that are proven, but those that are simply framed. A gift of rare obsidian from one island chief to another was never just a present. It was the reciprocity engineering technique, a subtle power move where carefully timed exchanges built unspoken obligations that everyone mistook for the natural rhythm of friendship. Across the vast Pacific, Polynesian navigators understood this science of social bonds. A master navigator would share a precious star chart with a visiting sailor, a gift offered with apparent spontaneity. This created a powerful, unstated debt, ensuring the recipient's own clan would provide safe harbor and vital resources on some future voyage. The alliance felt organic, a fortunate meeting of minds, but it was the product of a strategic generosity that made loyalty feel like a choice, not a transaction. In medieval Europe, this same principle structured the entire feudal system. A knight did not simply pledge loyalty to a lord. He performed a specific, valorous service, like rescuing a prized falcon or defending a border outpost. The lord, in turn, was expected to grant a favor, perhaps a parcel of land or a favorable marriage arrangement. This exchange was not a cold contract, but a dance of reciprocal gestures, each gift or service building a chain of obligation so strong it could bind families for generations. The resulting fealty felt like honorable tradition, its engineered origins long forgotten. The profound psychology at work is a deep-seated human instinct. We are wired to dislike feeling indebted. When someone gives us something we perceive as freely given and valuable, we feel an almost automatic pull to balance the scales, to return the favor and restore social equilibrium. This compulsion is so strong that the return favor often far exceeds the original gift's value. The engineer of the exchange relies on this very impulse, investing a small amount strategically to trigger a much larger return. In the modern marketplace, this ancient technique is the bedrock of relationship marketing. A software company provides an entire library of free, high-quality tutorials and templates. A new user benefits immensely, learning skills and saving time. There is no direct charge, but the company has engineered a relationship. When the user is ready to upgrade, their choice feels like a natural step, a way to support a community that has already given them so much. Their purchase is not just a transaction, it is reciprocation. In your own career, a colleague who offers insightful, unsolicited feedback on your presentation is not merely being helpful. They are making a smart social investment. When they later need an introduction or a champion for their own project, you are far more likely to provide it, driven by a genuine desire to repay their kindness. The favor you do for them feels like your own idea, a natural part of a collaborative relationship, never recognizing the subtle reciprocity loop that was initiated long before. This forces a quiet reassessment of the favors and gifts that flow through our lives. That unexpected piece of advice, that free sample that arrives in the mail, that introduction made without being asked, do they represent random acts of goodwill, or are they the opening moves in a carefully engineered exchange? Understanding this technique allows us to appreciate the elegant mechanics of social bonds, and to see the invisible architecture of obligation that so often masquerades as simple, fortunate connection. A ceremonial pipe passed between tribal leaders was never just a shared smoke. It was a binding agreement, a complex message of peace and alliance understood by all present, yet its true significance remained hidden to any outside observer. This is the symbolic action deployment, the 26th subtle power move, where a simple, visible gesture carries a depth of meaning accessible only to those who know the code. In the intricate court of the Byzantine Empire, the emperor's every movement was a carefully scripted symbol. When he chose to drink from a specific golden chalice during a state banquet, it was not a random preference. That single act signaled to his inner circle a shift in foreign policy, perhaps a new alliance with the power whose emblem was engraved on that very cup. The gesture appeared to the wider court as a simple royal action, but for the initiated it was a direct command, a communication more secure and potent than any written decree that could be intercepted or forged. Similarly, across the ancient world, the breaking of a clay tablet before witnesses was not an act of anger, but a powerful public termination of a contract. The symbolic destruction of the document communicated the finality of the decision in a way everyone could instantly understand, bypassing the need for lengthy legal explanations. The power of this maneuver lies in its dual nature. To the uninitiated, the action is mundane, easily dismissed as ritual or coincidence. But to the intended audience, it is a precise and unambiguous message, delivered with complete deniability. This creates a channel of influence that operates in plain sight, yet remains invisible to those outside its circle of understanding. Today, this ancient art of coded behavior shapes our modern landscape. A corporate CEO might symbolically relocate their office from the executive floor to a desk among the engineers. To most employees, this seems like a nice gesture of solidarity. To the company's board and competitors, however, it is a powerful signal of a strategic pivot toward innovation, a declaration that the company's priorities have fundamentally changed. The action is the same, but its meaning is layered for different audiences. In international diplomacy, the choice of which world leader is greeted first at a summit, or the specific type of handshake employed, are rarely accidents of protocol. They are carefully choreographed symbolic actions, broadcasting messages of respect, caution, or shifting alliances to global observers who are trained to read the silent language of statecraft. The handshake itself is simple, but the information it conveys is complex and consequential. This forces us to look differently at the seemingly routine actions of those in power. That public handshake, that sudden change in a leader's attire, that ceremonial ground breaking for a new building, are they merely what they appear to be, or are they a sophisticated deployment of symbols, communicating a hidden layer of intent to a select few? Learning to see the symbolic dimension of behavior allows us to decipher the quiet conversations happening right in front of us, conversations where a single gesture can speak volumes without uttering a single word. A medieval monk carefully copied an ancient chronicle, his quill detailing the heroic deeds of a long-dead king. To any reader, this was a simple recording of history, an objective account of the past. Yet hidden between the lines of those heroic battles and divine interventions was a subtle justification for the current ruler's right to the throne. This is the narrative embedding strategy, the 27th subtle power move, where a persuasive message is woven directly into the fabric of a story that appears neutral, educational, or purely for entertainment. The reader, absorbed by the narrative itself, absorbs the embedded ideology without any conscious awareness of being persuaded. During the Renaissance, explorers' travel accounts were not just thrilling tales of strange lands and exotic creatures. They were carefully crafted documents designed to promote a specific worldview, one that often justified colonization by framing foreign peoples as primitive and in need of European guidance. The reader, captivated by adventures on the high seas, unknowingly accepted a political and racial framework that served the interests of distant empires. The profound power of this strategy is its ability to bypass our critical defenses. When we are focused on a story, our skepticism is lowered. We are in a state of absorption, not analysis. A message delivered directly would be questioned, but that same message, delivered as a simple fact within a compelling narrative, feels like a piece of the story's reality, not an argument to be debated. Today, this ancient tactic is the invisible engine behind much of our media consumption. Product placement in films and television is its most obvious form. You are watching a character's story unfold, and you notice they are using a specific brand of smartphone or drinking a particular soda. The association is not an advertisement, it is part of the character's world. Your brain links the product to the story's emotions and values, creating a positive impression that feels entirely organic, not manufactured. But the strategy goes far deeper than consumer goods. Educational content, from documentaries to children's programming, can be a powerful vehicle for embedded narratives. A nature documentary might frame the animal kingdom entirely through the lens of ruthless competition, subtly reinforcing a specific socioeconomic worldview. A cartoon might model social relationships in a way that promotes certain cultural values over others. The learning feels neutral, but the underlying framework is anything but. This forces a crucial question about every story we consume. That gripping historical drama, that captivating documentary, that hilarious web series, are they simply telling a tale, or are they using that tale as a delivery system for something else entirely? The information feels objective because it is wrapped in a narrative we have chosen to trust. Recognizing this strategy is like learning to see the seams in the tapestry. You can still appreciate the picture, but you also become aware of the hands that wove it and the patterns they intended to create all along. A lone merchant on the Silk Road did not just see a route for his own goods, but the entire interconnected web of empires. He understood that a war in Persia would raise the price of silk in Rome, and that a failed monsoon in India would create a desperate market for Chinese grain. This is the systemic interconnection leverage, the 28th power move, where advantages are created by understanding and manipulating the invisible threads that bind separate systems together, making the resulting fortune appear as random chance. Renaissance banking families like the Medici did not simply lend money. They leveraged a deep understanding of interconnected European courts, trade routes, and papal finances. By moving capital and credit across these systems, they could stabilize a currency in one kingdom to make a profit on wool in another, their gains seeming like a series of fortunate market fluctuations rather than the result of a single panoramic strategy. The power here is derived from a higher level of perception. Most people operate within one system, focusing on their own local competition and rules. The system's thinker, however, sees the entire ecosystem, recognizing how a change in one area will ripple out and create an opportunity in another, often distant field. They do not just play the game, they understand how the different boards are connected. In our modern world, this ancient leverage is the engine of cross-industry breakthroughs. The smartphone in your pocket is not the result of a single industry's innovation. It is the culmination of systemic interconnection, where advances in military GPS technology, consumer touchscreen interfaces, and cellular communication were woven together into a single device. The result felt like a sudden, revolutionary leap, but it was the deliberate harvesting of ripe fruit from many different technological trees. Similarly, a company optimizing its global supply chain is practicing this same form of leverage. By understanding the interconnected weather patterns, labor markets, and political climates of a dozen different countries, they can reroute shipments around a coming typhoon or shift production ahead of an election that might disrupt port operations. Their seamless, uninterrupted service appears to customers as mere reliability, a fortunate lack of problems, when it is actually the product of a deeply interconnected systemic foresight. This reframes the nature of luck itself. That competitor who always seems to be in the right place at the right time, that product that perfectly anticipates a cultural shift, are they just blessed, or do they possess a map of the hidden connections that you have not yet learned to see? The most profound advantages are not found within a single system, but in the silent spaces where systems touch and where a slight nudge in one can create a tidal wave of change in another. A martial artist does not meet a powerful strike with rigid resistance, but yields to its force, redirecting the energy back toward the opponent in a move that looks like a perfectly timed accident. This is the adaptive response method, the 29th subtle power move, the art of using the existing momentum of a situation, even an adversarial one, to create an advantage that appears as fortunate timing or instinctive brilliance. Ancient military commanders mastered this reactive art. When an enemy launched a massive frontal assault, a shrewd general would not simply stand his ground. He would order a controlled withdrawal, allowing the enemy to pour into a pre-selected killing zone where their own momentum and chaotic formation made them vulnerable to a devastating counterattack. The victory seemed like a lucky break, the fortunate outcome of an enemy mistake, when it was actually the calculated redirection of that very mistake into a trap. In the political arena, Roman senators turned this method into a high art. Faced with a rival's public criticism, they would not issue a blunt denial. Instead, they would embrace the core of the accusation, reframing it to serve their own narrative. A charge of excessive ambition could be reinterpreted as a passionate commitment to public service, using the energy of the attack to burnish their reputation for dedication and humility. The scandal would deflate, and the senator would emerge stronger, their resilience appearing as a fortunate twist of public opinion rather than a masterful linguistic pivot. The profound effectiveness of this method lies in a fundamental shift in perspective. It views obstacles not as barriers to be smashed, but as forces to be channeled. An opponent's strength, a market downturn, or a personal failure is not the end of the game, but a new source of energy to be harnessed and redirected. This makes the resulting success appear almost magical, as if the strategist is blessed with an uncanny ability to land on their feet, when in reality they are simply masters of physics applied to human conflict. In modern business, this ancient maneuver is a hallmark of resilience. A company facing a disruptive new technology from a competitor does not simply try to outlaw it or dismiss it. They study it, learn from it, and then adapt their own business model to incorporate its best features, often launching a superior hybrid product that captures the market. Their comeback looks like a fortunate adaptation to an inevitable trend, but it was a strategic response that turned a threat into a propulsion system. On a personal level, this is the difference between being crushed by a setback and being forged by it. An individual who fails to get a coveted job might use the rejection to honestly assess their skills, filling the gaps they discovered during the interview process. When they land an even better position months later, it seems like a lucky second chance. In truth, it was the direct result of using the energy of that initial failure to propel themselves to a higher level of preparation. This reframes every challenge we face. That sudden market shift, that unexpected criticism, that personal disappointment, are they purely destructive forces, or are they currents of energy waiting for a skilled navigator to set a new sail? The adaptive response method teaches us that the most elegant victories are not those won by brute force, but those where we allow the world's own momentum to carry us to a destination we always intended to reach. A master architect in ancient Rome did not merely design a temple for the present day, but for the centuries of reverence and reinterpretation that would follow. This final subtle power move is the legacy-building maneuver, the art of creating works so fundamentally flexible that they acquire profound, unforeseen meaning across generations, making their original creator appear blessed with supernatural foresight. The Roman architect understood that the true purpose of the Pantheon's vast, unsupported dome was not just to inspire awe in his lifetime, but to serve as a challenge and an inspiration to engineers 2,000 years later. Its enduring presence feels predestined, a timeless marvel, yet it was the product of a design philosophy that intentionally left room for the future to find its own uses and meanings. Philosophical schools in ancient Greece and China operated on this same principle. They did not create rigid, unchangeable dogmas. Instead, they built core teachings that were ambiguous enough to be interpreted anew by each successive generation. A single line from Confucius or a paradoxical statement from Heraclitus could be endlessly debated and applied to entirely different social and political contexts. The longevity of these ideas seems like a miracle of prescience, but it was actually the result of a deliberate design for adaptability, a system built not with answers but with fertile questions. The power here is a form of temporal leverage. By designing something that can evolve, you are not betting on a single future outcome. You are planting a seed that can grow in multiple types of soil under many different suns. The value of your creation compounds with time, not through its stubborn permanence, but through its graceful ability to become what each new age needs it to be. In our contemporary world, this ancient maneuver is the secret to sustainable success. A business model designed for maximum efficiency in the current market is fragile. But a business model built around a core mission with flexible methods for achieving it, one that can pivot from selling products to offering subscriptions to facilitating a marketplace, is building a legacy. Its continued relevance appears to outsiders as a series of fortunate adaptations, when it is actually the harvest from a structure designed for change from its very foundation. On a personal level, this is the difference between learning a single, high-demand software and cultivating the underlying skill of rapid software acquisition. The first is a tactical win, the second is a legacy skill set. The individual who masters the art of learning itself creates a career that seems to magically anticipate industry shifts. Their ability to move seamlessly from one fading technology to the next emerging field looks like a string of lucky breaks, when it is the direct result of having built a mind that is a versatile and enduring tool. This final move reframes our entire understanding of foresight and fortune. The greatest legacies are not those that stand frozen in time, but those that flow with it, absorbing new meanings and serving new purposes their original creators could never have fully imagined. What looks from the future like a visionary prediction was, in its own present, simply a masterful act of leaving the most important doors open. These timeless strategies share a common psychological blueprint. From the forums of Rome to the courts of ancient China, masters of influence were working with the same fundamental elements of human nature. Greek philosophers like Aristotle understood that persuasion relied on pathos, logos, and ethos, appealing to universal emotions, logic, and credibility. A world away, Chinese strategists like Sun Tzu documented the same principles in a different language, writing that supreme skill lies in winning without fighting, a feat achieved by understanding the hopes and fears that drive all people. The true connection between a Trojan horse and a Byzantine information leak is not their cultural origin, but their shared exploitation of a single human tendency, our powerful drive to see patterns and meaning even where none exist. We are wired to connect dots, and the strategist simply provides the dots in a specific order, guiding us to draw the picture they have already envisioned. This pattern-seeking instinct is just one thread in a larger tapestry. Our deep-seated need for internal consistency is another universal lever. Once we make a small commitment or adopt a certain identity, we feel a powerful psychological pressure to act in ways that reinforce that initial choice, a principle the progressive commitment strategy exploits perfectly across every culture. Similarly, our reliance on social proof, that instinct to look to the crowd when we are uncertain, makes the social proof illusion effective whether it is staged in an Egyptian temple or a modern online forum. The stage changes, but the audience's reaction remains the same. What is truly remarkable is how these methods emerged independently across isolated civilizations. The Mayans, the Mongols, the Venetians all developed strikingly similar techniques for influence without direct force. They were not copying each other, they were separately discovering the same underlying laws of social physics. This cross-cultural recurrence points to something profound. These are not mere cultural artifacts or historical tricks. They are fundamental principles of human interaction, as reliable as the principles of leverage in physics or chemical reactions in chemistry. They work because of how our brains are built, not because of the specific stories we tell. Recognizing this transforms these 30 moves from a collection of historical anecdotes into a vital toolkit for understanding human behavior itself. When you see the same subtle maneuver in a Silicon Valley boardroom and a chronicle of medieval diplomacy, you are not seeing a coincidence, you are witnessing a universal law in action. This context allows us to look past the surface details of chariots and emails and to see the enduring patterns that shape our decisions, our relationships, and our world. These ancient patterns are not locked away in dusty scrolls. They are the invisible architecture of our modern world. A tech giant offering a free, incredibly useful app is practicing the Trojan Horse principle, building a user base that becomes dependent before the true monetization strategy is revealed. Digital marketers meticulously seed products with influencers, creating a social proof illusion that feels like an organic trend discovered by the crowd. Even in our personal networks, the calculated generosity ploy builds social capital one unsolicited favor at a time, creating a web of obligation that feels like genuine friendship. The digital age has not replaced these moves, it has supercharged them. Social media algorithms are the ultimate environmental engineers, shaping our digital landscape to guide our attention and our clicks. Online review systems and reputation metrics are modern perception gaps, where a crafted digital identity can be more powerful than the reality it represents. Global communication networks allow for indirect influence on a staggering scale, where a narrative can be embedded in a viral video or a meme, spreading a persuasive message under the guise of entertainment. What makes these ancient strategies so potent today is the sheer complexity they now operate within. We are inundated with information, making it nearly impossible to trace the origin of a trend or to distinguish a calculated leak from a genuine discovery. In a world of overwhelming noise, a deliberate strategy is almost indistinguishable from random chance. This is why understanding these 30 principles transforms from a historical curiosity into a form of practical self-defense. It provides a mental framework for navigating the complexity of modern business, social media, and even personal relationships. It allows you to recognize the subtle pressure of a progressive commitment in a subscription model, or the emotional resonance creation in a political campaign. This knowledge does not make you cynical, it makes you conscious. It allows you to appreciate the skill behind the influence and, more importantly, to decide for yourself when to step onto the path that has been so cleverly laid before you. These 30 ancient patterns reveal a world where history's greatest victories were often invisible in the making. We have journeyed from the hollow belly of a wooden horse to the quiet architecture of a legacy designed to span millennia, uncovering a single, profound truth. The most potent influence does not shout, it whispers. It makes the deliberate feel spontaneous, the calculated appear fortunate, and the carefully planned outcomes seem utterly inevitable. This strategic use of subtlety is the golden thread connecting every move, from the Trojan Horse to the Delayed Gratification Gambit, from the social mirror to the adaptive response. They all operate just below the surface of conscious awareness, in the fertile ground where our automatic instincts and cognitive shortcuts live. This knowledge is far more than a historical curiosity. It is a new lens for your own life. When you face a surprisingly generous offer, witness a sudden shift in public opinion, or feel the gentle pressure of a progressively escalating commitment, you now have a choice. You can see the surface event, or you can look for the deeper pattern. You can ask whether you are witnessing a genuine coincidence or the elegant execution of a timeless principle. This understanding empowers you to make more informed decisions in your career, your relationships, and your navigation of the digital world. It allows you to appreciate the immense skill behind the influence, and more importantly, to decide consciously when to walk a path that has been subtly laid before you. In a world that often feels chaotic and random, these principles offer a map to the hidden currents that shape our reality. The greatest power does not always lie in the most obvious force, but in the quiet ability to recognize the strategy hiding within the coincidence.